All right, it is week 14 of the Bober Handley Pro Football Podcast. He is former NFL offensive lineman Chris Bober. I'm Nick Handley with AM 590 ESPN Omaha. As we are discussing the week 14 headlines, the week 14 slate, as it would be. Of course, there are always COVID concerns. I just saw recently that the Chicago Bears have shut things down temporarily with 4 positives amongst the practice squad. So, yeah. But,
Well,
I mean, the
it down
Bears
about
season's –
6, right?
what's that?
They've been shut down since about week 6.
Yeah.
Now, when they're 5-1, after that, it's just all shut down on them.
October 18th is the last time they won a football game. So I got to real quickly mention that epic collapse they had against the Detroit Lions. For someone like me who is looking for change within this organization, I'm not talking about a simple coaching change. I'm talking about like major front office change.
That's good.
You get embarrassed in primetime television after a bye week by the Green Bay Packers, and then you lose in just epic proportion to a bad Detroit Lions team too. That usually gets the wheels of change in motion, right?
I mean, one would hope. I think that that between the two Andy Reid proteges are not looking good this year. I think in Chicago's it's one thing because the general manager is going to definitely be, he's the whole Trubisky Foles kind of deal. Head coach may or may not survive that, but he hasn't exactly built his resume there. And then over in Philadelphia, just the whole handling of Wentz and not being able to get him back to play. So it should be interesting to see who survives those two teams. But talking about survivors, we got people trying to survive the playoffs, trying to get into the playoffs. There's a lot of good matchups coming up. And it's interesting. You think that there's 7 teams, but there's some teams that are on the outside looking in right now that I consider to be like the Baltimore Ravens are not in the playoffs right now. The Las Vegas Raiders not in the playoffs. The Patriots not in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's only on the AFC side. And on the NFC side, the Cardinals are out. The Bears, it's funny, they're the 9th seed, which the Vikings are out. It's going to come down to all this last month of football.
And I think one of the interesting areas to watch for is something that we've kind of mocked the entire season is going to be who does emerge out of the NFC East. And all of a sudden we're seeing 2 teams in particular playing hard, playing good football. I don't know what the necessary staying power is going to be for either team, but I want to bring up 2 of them. One you're very familiar with, the New York Giants. They went in with Colt McCoy. And I said, hey, I thought that they would cover. But I also said I don't think they'll win. They go and they not only cover, but they beat the Russell Wilson-led Seattle Seahawks. That was an impressive win with not even your guy. I mean, not even Danny Dimes. So the Giants are surging. And then the one team to knock off the Pittsburgh Steelers to hand them their first loss. I mean, who would have thunk it on another afternoon game? It would be the WFT, the Washington football team. So those are the 2 teams right now, front runners in the NFC East. It seems like they're playing the best football right now. Technically the Eagles are not out of it. The Cowboys are not out of it because of how bad that division is. But those are 2 teams that look like they're at least trending in the right direction. So I ask you this one. Which team do you feel not only will win this division, but could one of these teams actually be a difficult matchup for somebody in the first round playoffs, given that they will have at least one home field game, even though you won't really have fans?
Well, it's very interesting that these 2 teams emerge out of 2020. This is definitely a crazy year, but you have to give a lot of credit to both organizations for bringing in new coaches that can inspire change. Mm-hmm. Ron Rivera and what he's done down there. We've always known he's a really good coach, but to see what he's overcome with cancer this year and how he's built that culture down there. And then, of course, Joe Judge, guy who's never been a head coach before, coming in. And a lot of people like this guy as a coach. And he's trending definitely in the right direction. So for each of these teams, I think that they're exactly the same right now. Like if you put them on the field, and if they played 4 games, one team would win 2, the other team would win the other 2. Now the Giants have the edge because they beat the football team twice this year.
WFT, baby.
WTF, WFT. But here's the deal. I think the Washington is who they are right now. Alex Smith's their quarterback. They don't have a dynamic playmaker at quarterback. Although I love Alex Smith, he just is not a guy that is going to win games for you. He's going to be a guy that doesn't lose games. You know what I mean? Their defense is stout. Very similar to the Giants, who with Graham as a DC down there, he does awesome job. Now he does a great job of using his personnel to his advantage. It kind of reminds me of John Fox. When I was
Hmm.
in New York, John Fox, who went on to great success as a head coach, um, he was the best I've seen at game planning internally. Right, we would go to practice, and I was on the scout team because I was young, and the defensive players were constantly thinking and knowing what was going on. He moved guys around. He put them in different situations. He knew the other team's tendencies, and that's what they're doing. They're just taking advantage of what the other team's giving them and taking away their best thing. So I give the edge probably to the Giants, but not for the reasons I talked about. If Daniel Jones comes back, then they actually have a dynamic playmaker
Yeah.
quarterback. Washington doesn't. You go to the playoffs, you better have a quarterback that can win the fourth quarter. And without right now, Colt McCoy, who again commendable for not losing that game, he's not going to win a playoff game for you. I don't
Yeah.
think Alex Smith is either, honestly. Daniel Jones, you let him go in a playoff game, he might get you a win. I think that's a better bet than anything Washington could put on the field. But as of right now, they're very similar. Just let's see where the quarterback situation goes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As long as Daniel Jones comes back, I would give the nod to the Giants. And, let me ask you also two things about either one of those teams in the playoffs. Okay, so they're going to host a game. And
Mhm.
first, let me ask you about Washington. The way that they're playing on offense, and you mentioned Alex Smith, kind of the glorified game manager, but given his story with him behind center and him, completing some passes, making some plays downfield, how much of a just kind of an uplifting presence is that given what he's able to do and how that can impact this offense? So that would be my first question. Then the second question for both of these teams, is it an advantage or disadvantage in the playoffs for these teams to be hosting what is going to be mainly an empty stadium, knowing that whoever comes in, whoever they play comes in, you got to kind of generate that emotion. I know they're professionals, everybody's paid to do their job, but not having the juice of the playoffs and the extra electricity in a home environment for either team, whether it's the away team or the home team, but just not having that stadium juice. Can that be an advantage for one of these two teams that, let's face it, whoever they play, they're still going to be considered the lesser opponent, even
Mhm.
as the home team?
Well, yeah, there's an advantage to playing at home. Even if it's not the crowd, you get to sleep in your own bed. You get to be around your family and just be in your normal routine rather than traveling. It's especially an advantage if a team has to travel from a pretty good distance to play. I remember we had to travel all the way to San Francisco to play in a playoff game, and we had to go a day early, right?
Hmm.
Which totally screws up your rhythm, sleeping, timing, and everything. But I think these teams this year have there's been no real crowd advantage. It's just more about being familiar with the field conditions, the
Yeah.
stadium, things like that. Both these teams are going to be outdoor type teams. They both run the ball. I am worried that Washington, Antonio Gibson, who they found as kind of their workhorse, all of a sudden goes down. That hurts them too. These teams rely on playing small, right? Playing big with their big guys, but keeping the score small.
Yeah.
And them losing Gibson hurts them a lot, I think. And the Giants have Wayne Gallman come out of nowhere and Alfred Morris. So they're not stellar either way, but
Hmm.
it is an advantage. I'd say it's an advantage to be at home.
And for Washington, I mean, can Alex Smith kind of squeeze the juice as much as he possibly can out of this offense, just kind of given what he's gone through? I mean, he does have some skill. I mean, we know he's not considered an elite quarterback or even maybe in the second tier, but as far as game managers go, and then you couple that with what he's sort of persevered through, I mean, can that be a weapon for this offense?
I think it can be with the right matchup. If they're talking about the NFC and the wild card, if you can draw a team like Seattle, who doesn't have a great
Hmm.
pass rush, that's a different game than drawing, a team that can get after the passer.
Yeah.
And that's a much different scenario to be able to protect your quarterback and have time. So that depends on who if they would make the playoffs, who they would draw in a matchup. Where the Giants, I think, match up a little better for more situations. Their O lines come along pretty good. Um, and if they get Daniel Jones back, the pass rush isn't as a big of a factor as it is against Washington. But Alex Smith, if he gets a little time, he's got some mojo, man. He can do some things.
Going back to the playoff picture right now and looking at the AFC, it's pretty cut and dry there. You have the Chiefs I mean, they've already clinched a playoff berth, obviously, but as the divisional champs in the West, Pittsburgh, even with the loss, still consider them to be a very good team and a team that could have Super Bowl contention in the future. But also the Buffalo Bills, they played well. Tennessee Titans, depends which one shows up. They got beat up by the Cleveland Browns, obviously. The Browns, speaking of which, a wild card team. Dolphins and Colts, all wild card teams right now. If you look at the most dangerous wild card team out of the AFC, and let's even put, just because technically they're in the hunt, the Raiders and the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Which one of those teams, either the wild cards or the guys that could possibly still play their way in, would scare you the most?
I would say the Colts. Right now, I think the Colts are a team that if they stay healthy, like they got DeForest Buckner back last week, is huge. Phillip Rivers, he's got some juice left in him. They're getting healthy on the offensive side. T.Y. Hilton's playing good. Jonathan Taylor's running good. They got some Naheem Himes, and they're led by their defense. So in my mind, they're a dangerous team. They're a dangerous matchup right now, and I'm really hoping the Chiefs jump up into that one spot so they don't have to play Indianapolis, who, they beat them last time, but they've had some battles with them and lost some games they should have
Yeah.
won in the playoffs. So the Colts are the team that I think is dangerous. I mean, I think of Cleveland, Miami, Tennessee, there's ways to beat them that I think that are proven. I'm not sold on them winning big games. I think the Colts with Phillip Rivers, he scares me just a little bit.
Yeah. NFC, same question. If we're looking at the wild card teams, the Seahawks, you mentioned the Seahawks earlier, the Bucks, the Vikings. I'll throw the Cardinals in there because they're technically in the hunt. I'm not going to worry about the Bears, Niners, or Washington. Well, Washington we can because they could still win the division, but the other teams that are below 500 that are not going to win the division, I'm not going to count them in. So amongst that group, basically Seattle, Tampa Bay, Minnesota. If Washington wins the division and Arizona, who would worry you the most out of that group?
I'd say Tampa Bay, just for the amount of talent they have and the fact that they have Tom Brady, right? There's a guy who has shown even within the recent 2-3 years ago that he can come back down 28-3 in a Super Bowl, and he's got some talent there. They just haven't been able to put it together thus far. And if you put him in a playoff game in a one-game scenario, it's going to be hard to bet against Tom Brady, honestly, even if he's not on the better team. So
Yeah.
the Tom Brady getting in the playoffs is something I don't think anyone wants to see. I think it's going to happen, but he is going to be a tough out because he does not lose very often in the playoffs.
Looking at our weekend bets, I not only did I flourish, but my side bet with you, where I said Josh Allen will have he will account for 3 touchdowns.
Well, you said 4 touchdowns, and
did I say 4? Well, he had 4, so I couldn't remember if I said 3 or 4. Well, he had 4 anyway, so either way, I win.
We don't want to trip over the past too much, but I will say that was an interesting game how that came out because that game, so many people are on San Francisco. Everything lined up for San Francisco to make that much more of a game than they did. The X factor in that game was Josh Allen, right? And we hadn't seen that kind of Josh Allen since early in the season. I think a late season bye, they got healthy, but after watching the early game with Alex Smith and Roethlisberger, kind of just like, they're not either with great arm strength. Josh Allen, when he came out and threw the ball, you're like, holy cow! And someday someone's going to figure out how to keep that guy in the pocket and not let him scramble right, because he made some amazing throws. He was the difference in that game. That game went back and forth early on, and then all of a sudden they get 2 goal line stops each. Buffalo gets the ball back, and they throw an interception, which they turn into points. That gives them a 2 touchdown lead. Then after that, it was very even. It was an even game except for that turnover, honestly, and Josh Allen, obviously. So let's see what they can do against good opponents, right? Let's see what they can do to finish out this year. Starting to get hot at the very right point. So that was a great pick for you. My other pick came through for me, which was awesome. I'm trying to go back and look at what I did. I picked up on Cleveland, another really good game, and exactly what we thought would happen. No pass.
Well, and that final score, Bober, made it look closer than it was. Cleveland just stomped Tennessee. They did it.
And they did it by being unpredictable and passing on first down. They ran heavy and they passed out of it, which is exactly what Tennessee should have done. But they're very predictable. King Henry can only beat you very slowly, where Cleveland got a huge lead. Baker was clean, and Tennessee cannot rush the passer. So that they knew that. Stefanski, I'm putting him down as rookie coach of the year, whatever you want to say. He's done a marvelous job out there, maximizing what they got.
Yeah.
Again, I think they have some tough games coming up, and they may not be a Super Bowl contender, but they're put together really well. That was a fun game to watch. I was so glad to see it. And then of course Green Bay beat up on your guys, and the Giants. I love
The
to watch the
Eagles.
Giants come back and win that thing. So you were 2-0. I was 1-1 in our best bets. It's funny because the other best bet I thought about looking at was the Chargers because no one predicted for them to
Oh,
get beat up that bad by the Patriots. But once again, it was a coaching mismatch. Belichick, who is great at the details, great at special teams.
yeah.
Did they have
The
three scores on
defense and
special?
special teams are unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. And I gotta say, we're seeing Belichick play in a year when he doesn't have Tom Brady, and I think he's doing such a great job with what he has out there.
They're
You know,
technically in. I mean, they're in the hunt still. I don't think they make it. I think they dug themselves too big of a hole early on. But if that team were to make the playoffs, I have no problem saying this, Chris. I think that's the best coaching job we've seen from Bill Belichick ever.
yeah,
Ever.
yeah. You look at the undefeated teams in the Super Bowls, but he just goes shows you how valuable he is.
Yeah.
It'd be scary to think that if he gets just a few more players, the kind of team he get, if he can just get a quarterback.
Right.
Cam Newton was, I think, a wrong experiment. He's on the wrong side of age for him. But yeah, they're doing good. So we did okay last week. This NFL starting to shape up. There's some big games coming up that are gonna make and break hearts this week.
So, and going back to that Packers Eagles game, and I was texting you because I said, well, the Eagles are doing the Packers doing their very best to let the Eagles get a backdoor cover, and it didn't happen. But
Yeah.
what did come out of that game is a pretty big headline this week, too, and that is Jalen Hurts will be the starter for the Eagles. We know how much money is on the books for the Philadelphia Eagles and Carson Wentz. I don't know if they're saying this because they know they have so much money invested into Carson Wentz, or if this is what they really feel. But it almost sounds like, well, they're doing this to give Carson Wentz a little bit of a break. We're going to put him on the sideline, just give him kind of a mental rest from everything and see if maybe he can reset it. The question I have for you is, let's say Jalen Hurts comes out this week and plays well. We saw him do a pretty nice job there towards the end of that Green Bay game. I mean, does Carson Wentz ever get his job back? And then what do the Eagles do in the offseason? Because I don't have the exact number in front of me, but if they decided to cut Carson Wentz, it's almost like $48, $49 million of dead money. So that cannot be an option. And I don't know what team in the NFL, even the most quarterback desperate teams like my Chicago Bears, would be willing to take on that contract given the fact that Carson Wentz looks like a shell of himself right now. And I don't know if anybody feels confident with the amount of money that they'd have to take on that would want to make some type of a trade proposal or get in bed with the Eagles on this one.
Yeah, I think that given the facts of the situation, I think it's actually closer to like 60 million. It's
Oof.
huge. It's because they'd have to accelerate some bonuses. If they cut him next year, Carson Wentz will be with the Eagles next year. I can guarantee that.
He
Now,
has to be, right?
I think what you got to see is you're looking at a major investment in a player like that, and that's more valuable than anyone else in that organization,
Mm-hmm.
including the coach, including the GM. So if I were to say, I believe they pulled Carson out just to stop the train wreck. Like,
Yeah.
just put them on the shelf. Say, well, we're gonna build you back up, okay? And they have to next year bring in a coach, whether it's a head coach or coordinator, that can
Mm-hmm.
develop him back to the player he was. You look at what Frank Wright did with him.
Yeah.
You need a guy like that. I mean, honestly, like go find a Frank Wright clone and
Hey,
hire him
Matt
as a
Nagy
coach.
might be available.
He might be, but the deal is they have more invested in him than anyone else. So he's staying there. The coach might not be there, the GM might not be there, but the coach is, Carson Wentz is going to be there just because there's no way. Can you imagine a $60 million cap hit? Not to mention all the
No.
draft picks they gave up.
Well, especially
They were
this year, given the pandemic and the financial challenges the
going to go
organization's going
down.
to have. There's no
Yeah.
way you could justify doing that.
You're going to have, I think they're just going to try to put him on there so it doesn't get worse. Like, let's
Yeah.
not beat him up anymore. Let him just ride this out and come back next year stronger than ever. And it may or may not be with the coach, but they need to find a way, go back and just study what he did under Frank Reich and say, who can we put around him to make him at that level again? There's just no way. They'd be better just shutting down the team for a year. If you take
Yeah.
that kind of a hit, it's going to be half their salary cap. It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting. I kind of mocked it, but I do not, just as of today, and depending on what happens the rest of the season, I do feel confident that the Chicago Bears will fire Ryan Pace, and I think Matt Nagy will be a casualty of that as well, because I think the new GM is going to want to
Mhm.
be able to have his own guy in there. I would say this about Matt Nagy as a head coach, and I will say not all of it's his fault because he did not draft Mitchell Trubisky. He
No.
inherited him, but
Mhm.
he also was part of the give me Nick Foles
Mhm.
and the money that it's going to cost to get him, as opposed to $1 million for Jameis Winston or $1 million for Cam Newton. That did not work out. So that's on Nagy as well. But there still is, I think, within the coaching circles, a lot of respect for Matt Nagy as a coordinator. And if Doug Peterson keeps his job, and Matt Nagy is unemployed, I wouldn't be shocked. In fact, I'd almost say Matt Nagy should be on your short list of guys to come in and maybe remedy that situation with Carson Wentz.
Totally agree. I think that would be a great fit. Put those two together. That would be very close to or similar to having Frank Reich out there. So
Yeah.
I still like Carson Wentz. I just think I think I saw Dan Orlovsky say they've broken him. I don't know what
I,
they
I
they
don't know either.
they've screwed up his wiring somewhere. Just
Mm-hmm.
take a break and reset. I think is
Yeah.
probably what you're going to see happen.
All right, week 14 gets underway tonight. And speaking of those Patriots, too, this is a great matchup with the Rams. Now, I like the Rams, and I like the number in this one at
Mhm.
4.5. And that's what I just recently saw. I'm trying not to gush over what the Patriots did because, as you know, someone who's played in the league, when you have that type of performance, special teams, and defense, yeah, there's skill there, and this is the Belichick identity. But to have all of those breaks go your way in that game and be able to win the way that they did, that's not something you could expect every week. The Rams, though, they need to kind of stay on top of this right now. This is going to be a good challenge because I love these types of matchups, the chess matchup between an offensive-minded guy like Sean McVay and Bill Belichick. It's that Super Bowl rematch from a couple of years too. Obviously, the Rams and McVay are going to be fired up for this one, but I also think Bill Belichick. Look, no one's really given them still much of a shot. I just get the feeling this is where Bill Belichick does some of his best work. My only problem is I don't know if the Patriots offense is a very good matchup for this Rams defense.
I agree. I mean, Cam Newton is just another running back there. I think last week he didn't even have 100 yards passing, and
Yeah.
they had a huge win. That huge win against the Chargers, but they didn't even pass the ball. He just doesn't have it anymore, right? And either they're not using him, which I really highly doubt that they haven't figured that out, or he just doesn't have it. Um, I would expect. I mean, the over under on this is 44. It may not get to 30. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Belichick will do anything to. I mean, he might start taking a knee in the second quarter. I don't know. He's going to pull something out of there trying to beat the LA Rams, but the LA Rams need to show that they can start making a push towards the playoffs. They've had some great games, then they have a let off.
Mm-hmm.
4.5 is a good number. It was 5.5 even an hour ago when I was looking at this. So I think there's value in 4.5 for the Rams. But it's so hard to. I mean, how many times are we going to learn not to bet against Belichick? I don't know
Yeah.
where his weak spots are, and I don't know if he has one here. I do know that New England is staying out there, right there, so they're going to play in the same stadium two weeks in a row, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
talked about in the broadcast last week how Belichick went through and he checked the sun angles and all these things. So
Of course he did.
they're out there 10 days now, and
Yeah.
they're focused on football. And in that situation, Belichick shines. It's almost like a Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
He gets his best games at when he gets his guys to focus. So I'm not touching this one. I
I
think the
wouldn't either.
Rams are good at 4.5, but I wouldn't bet it. I
Yeah.
might bet the under more than anything. If I'm going on anything, under.
Yeah, I would agree. And I just think the one area that I feel like the Rams prevail is that matchup of the Patriots offense versus the Rams defense. But if the Patriots, again, defensively can sort of discombobulate Jared Goff and that offense, create a couple turnovers, basically they want to muddy this thing up as best as they can. If they can do that, then, I mean, look out. This could be a really fun finish.
Mm.
The Sunday games are noon games, and maybe not the matchup as much. We'll touch on it here in a moment. But two organizations that I think are probably right now, unfortunately for those fan bases, me being one of those fans of one of those organizations, are probably in the blow up mode. Cowboys taking on the Bengals. Bears taking on the Texans. The Bears will get another reminder of who they passed up on in the 2017 draft, Deshaun Watson. Now they got to deal with Patrick Mahomes a year ago. So I look at both of the Cowboys and the Bears. Both of these teams could win their games. Dallas is a 3.5 point favorite. Houston is a slight favorite against Chicago. Both the Cowboys and the Bears could win those games. But does it really matter? And if you're looking at Jerry Jones and the decisions that he has to make in the offseason, do they want to blow this thing up? The offensive line is shot. It's not what it was years ago. They're going to have to pay Dak Prescott. They might franchise tag him again, but I just don't see the Cowboys trying to stay the course. And if they do, I think this is going to be the same issue that they're having right now. And the same thing for the Chicago Bears. If they do nothing, then you're going to be looking at a similar situation where you're going into December and playing football that is not going to be relevant to the postseason picture. So as I look at those two games, I think of just two teams that are ready to get the season over with and start to make some very difficult decisions.
Yeah, so I mean, Dallas, Cincinnati. I would love Cincinnati here if I knew that Brandon Allen was going to play. Honestly, not Finley. Holy cow, that guy's all over the place. But Allen went out last week with I think a chest injury, so
Yeah.
not sure if he comes back. Dallas, I mean, the Red Rifle. He hasn't played very bad, honestly. But their run defense, they give up like 300 yards
Oh,
rushing.
their defense is awful.
And Baltimore does that to a lot of people. Plus, Dallas is coming off a short week, right? I would jump on Cincinnati if Allen was playing, but I don't know if they can take advantage of the bad run defense because they can't run the ball either.
Is Dalton going to be fired up though? It's his old team here. I mean, is that going to be the extra
I don't know if
motivation
that's
right
going to
now?
play into it or not. I don't know if it's going to help them or hurt them. It's
Yeah.
just I don't know. Now I really wish Houston was playing somewhere a little bit nicer because I like Houston a lot in this game. The X factor in this game is the weather. They're going to
Yeah.
Chicago. I mean, I don't think you're getting bad weather, but you're going to get cold weather, and that doesn't translate well for a dome team. Deshaun Watson. Last time they went up to Cleveland, they only put up
35 and partly sunny. That's what I just saw.
which is chilly, man. It's gonna get, Deshaun Watson last time he went to Cleveland in weather only scored 7 points. So if it wasn't for the weather part here, I would jump all over Houston because I think that they could definitely beat Chicago, and they're the better team. They should beat them, but the weather might keep Chicago around just a little bit.
Yeah, the Bears defense, by the way, has been horrendous the last 2 weeks. I mean, even let Matthew Stafford throw for over 400 yards, and then what Green Bay did to him a week ago.
I think
Prior to that, I mean, that's been the one thing that the Bears have been able to lean on, and all of a sudden, that the last couple of weeks is completely absent. So, I mean, who knows?
they've carried him too long. I mean,
Yeah.
so at some point you can't do everything for a team, and they just appeared to a team that's kind of mailed it in now. I don't think you're going to get the number one ultimate effort. It's just so hard. There's a difference
Yeah.
between playing for something and playing for nothing.
All right, so the big one, the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to Miami to take on the Dolphins. Dolphins, good defense of team. The Chiefs can score anytime against anybody. The Chiefs are a full touchdown favorite. But we talk about this a lot. You bring this up a lot too. The travel, even though you're a little bit more centrally located in Kansas City as opposed to going from, say, LA to Miami, the travel all the way out there to Miami, the humidity and everything that kind of comes with that type of home field advantage for the Dolphins. How do you see this one playing out?
It's hard to tell, honestly. I think seven's a big number, and Miami does so many things. Brian Flores and those guys, they've done a great job of winning at the little things, right? Defense, special teams, things like that. So that could keep this game close. I mean, I don't think the Chiefs are in danger really of not being able to pull it out if they want. But it's going to be interesting to see if the Chiefs finally take a step forward and beat a team that they're way better than with the point spread that they should, right? To see them play 4 quarters, to see them be versatile on offense, not just dump it off to Kelsey on third down when they need it, to see them take some shots and hit them, to see them run the ball when they can. It's a big. I wouldn't bet this game. I might bet the under if anything, but I just don't know. I'd love to see the Chiefs take a step forward and beat them by 7 or more because that's how they should beat them. But to start like fine tuning themselves towards the playoffs is where they need to go. If this is another close game where they have to come back, I think they're treading water. I think they need to start going forward.
Cardinals, Giants, another opportunity for the Giants to, well, first of all, they technically do lead the NFC, so obviously trying to stay on top of that division. But also, again, I think if we're going to continue to kind of see this team, making some waves as they get closer to the postseason, and if they do qualify the postseason, that they can actually handle a team in that first round. I think this is a great opportunity. Cardinals sitting there at 6-6. They're desperate, so you know you're going to get a tremendous effort out of this talented Cardinals team, young team, but talented team. Right now, Arizona is a slight favorite. I've seen by as much as 2 or 1.5 points in this one. This is another game that I don't think I'd feel confident in touching because I don't know exactly where Arizona is, and I do like the way the Giants are playing, but I also understand that the Giants are not a perfect team either.
Yeah, especially if the Giants are going to roll out Colt McCoy, I wouldn't
Right.
stay away from that because you just don't know what he has left in the tank. I mean, he won his first game since 2014 last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I'd put a lot of confidence in him. I'd love to see the defense win a close game here. My big thing in watching this is to see what Kyler Murray is going to do. He's only rushed the ball like 5 times in the last couple of games,
Yeah.
which is weird because I think he has a shoulder injury. So they're not functional without him being just dynamic, and he hasn't done that in a while. So this could be a really good game. Maybe the Giants pull this out. Arizona is just this team that you need Kyler Murray to kind of spark them to get going. If without it, they're very average.
So you mentioned you kind of want to see the Chiefs get going.
Mhm.
This next game, I want to see, and you mentioned the team wild card wise that could be a big time threat in the postseason, and I would agree in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a game against the Vikings that I really want to see the Buccaneers play the way that they should. Now, what their defense will be going up against with Dalvin Cook is going to be a significant task, but I think their defense has the parts to be able to slow that down and to put pressure on Kirk Cousins and win that battle. My question is the offense against still a extremely depleted Minnesota Viking defense, especially in the secondary with all the weapons. Chris, I don't think there's any excuse
Mhm.
for the Buccaneers to stumble in this game. And if we are to take them serious, I think that's the Tampa Bay offensive matchup against a depleted yet well coached Mike Zimmer defense for Minnesota. You got to see Tampa Bay take huge strides here, right?
This is a great spot and a great matchup for Tampa, in my opinion. They're coming off a bye number one, which guys that are my age, like Tom Brady, definitely appreciate. They've had two close losses. They've lost by 3 points to the Chargers. I mean, the Rams and the Chiefs at home recently. So they're back home. They've been home for a while. Minnesota's their last 3 games they've won have been against kind of inferior opponents.
Yeah.
And Tampa Bay actually can stop the run. You saw what they did to the Chiefs and what they did to the Rams. They had to beat them throwing the ball. So they're tough up front, right? They're not great on the back end if you have a dynamic pass game, but the Vikings don't. Not without running the ball. So
Right.
I think it's just a really good matchup for Tampa. At 6.5, I mean, it's worth kind of probably taking a flyer on
I,
Tampa. I mean,
I
I
would
think
agree.
they win by that or more. I think they're totally in a different class than Minnesota, and this is the line here is going to be very differentiated
Yeah.
between the playoff team and a non-playoff team. I think that's what happens. I just don't see Minnesota hanging in this game.
Two teams that are not in the playoff picture, the Carolina Panthers and the Broncos. Panthers hosting the Broncos. Carolina is actually a slight favorite in this one by 3 points. This is one that, I mean, unless you have an inside line on either one of these teams, I would say this is an absolute toss up of a game. We've seen both teams on certain weekends sort of exceed expectations, but then we've also seen them kind of come back down to form of what we thought that they were. These are not good football teams, either one of them. We know what they're all trying to do for the future. So that's not to say that they're, horrible organizations. I don't look at either one of these teams and say, man, they are playing great football right now. So Broncos, Panthers, with the Panthers at last check, a 3 to 2.5 point favorite. Flip of the coin on this one for me.
So I'm gonna actually go with. Oh God, I was gonna do this here. I like Denver in this spot. I like
Okay.
Denver in this spot. Here's the deal. This all depends on is Christian McCaffrey coming back? Did they
Right.
predict him to come back this week? I don't think he is he?
I don't know. It's still
Potentially.
not. It's not been completely ruled out as far as I know as of today. But I also don't know if it seems like he's trending for a return. I'm with you. That could be a huge factor on how you want to lean towards this game.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try to do a little bit here because I know that DJ Moore is out, right?
Yes.
He tested positive. He's not going to be able to play. Carolina has several other players who are at least close contacts, so they're in that kind of mode of not having guys there. I think that hurts them. I think Denver, I got 3.5, and I like Denver at 3.5. I do. I think they might lose by 3, but I like the number 3.5. I like the underdog in this side. So I'm going to pick Denver as my underdog this week.
Okay.
Oh God, I'm just gotta hope to come back.
You good?
I
You
like the
okay?
spot. I like it here. I think that I think the under is worth looking at too. But Carolina, I mean, if they, especially if those guys out, DJ
Mhm.
Moore's out. I know. I like Denver. Denver's playing tough. They're playing for something now. I think that they're playing better football. Vic Fangio's has them going good. So I'm taking at 3.5. I'm taking them, and I'm just praying that McCaffrey doesn't come back.
The next one, and this is going to be the team that I am taking, laying the points, is going to be Tennessee against the Jaguars. Look, I like the way Jacksonville has been playing. They're fighting hard, but I think they also know that they can't really get into a position where they want too much success right now because they're in a dead heat right now with the New York Jets. We saw how the Jets handled the late game strategy of Hail Mary, let's put everybody back. No, heck no. We're gonna Craig Williams loses his job because he decides to go a domino blitz and it ends up backfiring as Vegas wins that game. So I think there are teams that understand that they're gonna do some stuff that probably go against conventional wisdom just for the hell of it, because at the end of the day, if they lose, that's probably going to benefit their organization more so than a win. The Jaguars are obviously in that position. Tennessee, after just getting humiliated by the Cleveland Browns last week, again, they need to show something. They need to put themselves squarely into that playoff picture. And this is a matchup they should be able to do that against. Now, I'm seeing them at 7.5. I think this is a game that they should win by at least 10. And if they don't, then you know what, Tennessee, I've got nothing for you. So I'm going to just basically say I think Tennessee is a much better team given where we are in the season. I don't think Jacksonville is. I don't want to say, I hate saying they're not going to put forth the effort because they will. But as far as their overall strategy and the things that they would do that could keep them in a game or close, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be applied here. So yeah, I'm going to take Derrick Henry, a heavy dose of Derrick Henry against Jacksonville laying the 7.5.
Yeah, I think it's a good bet. I think Tennessee has a huge bounce back this week. They've shown that they will beat up on the weaker teams.
Mm-hmm.
So it would not be surprising if they come out and do this. I think they've already, actually at the end of the beginning of this year, Jacksonville gave them a pretty good game, but that was a
Yeah,
different Jacksonville team than what we're seeing now.
right.
I do think Tennessee rolls in this one. Probably won't even be a good game to watch because they'll just come out and run right down their throats. And here's what you want to watch for in my mind to see if Tennessee's going to ascend to like a playoff team that can win some playoff games. Look and see if they start throwing the ball on first down. Right, they are so predictable, and I love Arthur Smith and what his core concepts, but you got to change it up. Teams are knowing what you're doing, and they got some weapons. Man, they got some weapons. Just let them loose. Do what Cleveland did to you last week, and put heavy in there and hit AJ Brown, hit Corey Davis. If they do that, then they start being a team worth noticing. If they just run the ball with Henry and just they score 4 touchdowns running the ball, then who cares? That
Yeah,
they've always shown they can do that. Let's see if they can go and be versatile and be a playoff caliber offense. Oh, by the way, they can't rush the passer either, which
yeah,
really
yeah.
and it's some pressure. They pressured Baker Mayfield one time in the first half last week. That's it. You can't get there with 4. Bring some pressure because Mayfield can't handle pressure, and they let him sit back there with nothing.
Their third down defense, Tennessee's, is bad. It
Mm.
it just is. It's been bad all year. It hasn't improved. That's something that I think is going to hurt them in the postseason. So,
I want to
but
go back to that game last week where you picked up on the 4 touchdowns with Buffalo. He throws 4 touchdowns. Why couldn't he throw 1 or 2 of them to Stephon Diggs, who's on my fantasy team? He had 0 touchdowns and he caught some balls, just no touchdowns. It's like, come on, your best
yeah,
guy's out there. Hit him for touchdowns.
I'm sorry.
I end up winning. I got the number 1 seed in my
Oh
playoffs.
well, then what are you complaining about?
Well, I'm kind of limping
You just
into it.
trying to get style points? Did you guys have like a playoff committee that seeds according on style points then,
It's
or
kind of
what?
like the college football. We
Yeah.
have a committee. I'll sit in there and put seeds in.
Jeez. Jeez. Get your number 1 seed and shut up. Okay, come on.
I'm limping into it though, so who knows how long that lasts.
Yeah. Speaking of limping in, there was a time that I did feel the Las Vegas Raiders were a legitimate AFC
Mm.
playoff team, and now they're the outside looking in. Let's not sit there and celebrate their victory over the Jets. Okay, this team, honestly, if the Jets were in a different spot, this should be a 6-6 football team. They get that win. Greg Williams makes just a completely stupid decision. Hey, we're going to blitz everybody. Yeah, that's not smart. And
No one
and
likes
it
him
blew up.
anyway, so.
Yeah, right. So they win that game. They're 7-5, so the record looks okay. The Colts are 8-4. Colts are a slight favorite of field goal or just slightly more, 3 to 3.5 is what I'm seeing. I I can't trust the Raiders anymore. Now, is there skill with this team? Absolutely. And I just think that when you look at this team that's 2 games above 500, I think it's kind of fraudulent. I just I have not been happy with the Raiders in their attempt to sustain success throughout this season, where I do think there's obviously some great football within this team. I still think they're one of the most physical teams up front. They've got a great running back in Brandon Jacobs. I think Carr is more than capable quarterback. Defensively, they should be playing better, but this is the most I think this is one of the most inconsistent teams I've seen in the entire league all throughout the season. And I don't know if that's a reflection on John Gruden or what, but there's no way I could roll with the Raiders on this one. Yet, I can't bet against them because I have no idea if this is a week that they show up and they play great football because they have that in them as well.
Well, I'm going to bet against the Raiders. I have Indy at -2.5 when I pulled that this
Okay.
morning. So if they're giving me 2.5 points, I'll take Indianapolis. I think they're dangerous. I think they finally got their guys back on defense, which is going to be a problem. The Raiders don't have Josh Jacobs. That hurts them
Right.
big time. It hurts me too because he's on my fantasy team. So he can be out this week. Just have him come back next week when I have to play someone. Indy is in a good spot, I think. I think Vegas is they're just kind of lost for an identity, right? And Gruden's got to get that figured out. But without Josh Jacobs, I think they become one-dimensional, and that is a bad place to be against this Colts defense, who in a dome on turf is very fast. They're very physical. The other thing that comes up is the Raiders cannot rush the football either. I mean, excuse me, rush the passer.
Yeah.
Right? They're just not a team that's going to get sacks. They got to bring pressure. And I think Phillip Rivers is very salty, right? He's playing some good football. The Colts have, Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor's playing well. They got that kid from USC, Pittman. T.Y. Hilton showing up. Naheem Himes. I like Indy this game. 2.5 points. I'll take them as my best bet this week to beat the Raiders by 2.5 or more.
I was so tempted to go with this next game as my underdog, but I'm not going to do it. Jets Seahawks. It's a big number. It's the only reason I say the Jets are. They're playing out the season. It's what they're doing. The Seahawks, they have to win this game, but the number I'm seeing, I don't know what you're seeing right now. I got 13.5 is what Seattle would be laying in this one. I mean, Seattle should be a team that can cover that, but I don't. I think Seattle wins. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the Jets are not going to allow themselves to win a football game, but Seattle, I was so high on in the first half, and right now I just have more questions than answers. That loss that they had to the Giants, I mean, good for the Giants for playing better football, but hey, if you're to be taken serious as a legit playoff team that could make a run at the Saints or anybody else in the NFC, you got to win that football game. So, I mean, I think the Seahawks win, but I'm not going to say there's really any style points here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I would lean towards the Jets. I wouldn't bet them because that number. I lean towards them covering the spread.
That's kind of where I was, but I figured, no, it's still the Jets.
Yeah, it is still the Jets and Seattle. You just don't know. I mean, where did Russell Wilson go, right? And DK
Yeah.
Metcalf, who the guy I was playing against last week had both those guys on his fantasy team, and they just didn't do anything. So thank you, Giants. But yeah, this is there's a lot of big numbers this week. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of pro bettors doing is teasing legs down. So what you can do is you can take two teams and tease them, plus or minus 6. And if you bet them together, you're going to pay 110, 115 for that bet. But there's a lot of good teasers legs this week, right? If you take Seattle down to a certain point and then do that, or you can take Detroit or Green Bay down, you can take a lot of big numbers down and teams that easily cover those. So it's hard to bet big numbers, but maybe some teaser legs are what people want to do out there.
Packers, Lions. The Lions had that great come from behind victory over the Chicago Bears. Darrell Bevell, now the coach after Matt Patricia and their general manager were fired. You could tell that the Lions were a lot more energized. I was reading an article and had Michael Rothstein actually on my show earlier this week, talked about how just everything is a little bit more laid back and fun right now compared to when Patricia was there trying to implement that whole Patriot way thing into the Lions locker room. So that's great. This is a team that probably feels somewhat liberated.
The bounce
But
back every time.
I know exactly, but it is still the Detroit Lions. There's still so many flaws. I don't know if we're going to see Galladay again. Swift is probably out again too, which makes him even more impressive what the Lions were able to pull off last week against the Packers. It's one thing to do that against the Bears, but you're playing the Packers. You're playing the best team in the NFC North, one of the best teams in the NFC. Packers are a touchdown and a half favorite. I already gave my favorite of the week, but this would be right up there too if I were to have to take a second one that Green Bay covers this number against the Lions.
Yeah, not worth going into too much on this, but I will say they're going to Detroit, which is a little bit different than playing up in Green Bay. So I'm staying away from this big number.
Saints Eagles with the Saints as a touchdown favorite against the Eagles and the debut of Jalen Hurts. So get this, you're going to have Jalen Hurts versus Taysom Hill. How about that?
You're seeing a lot of backups playing later in this
No.
year. I think that New Orleans will probably not play Breeze this week. I think that's what they've said, just because it's the Eagles. So, and I know Hurts is got some. He's played better, but let's be honest with you, nothing's going great with the Eagles these days. The only thing that gets me is 6.5 is a number that, I just at what point do people figure out Taysom Hill? Right?
Yeah.
He looked better as a passer last week, but he's got some flaws too. It's just not something he does naturally. So let's see if they can do that. Philly actually does decent, especially early in games against a run. So if they can bottle him up, what really gets me, especially because he's on my fantasy team, is how little they're using Alvin Kamara
Yeah.
with Taysom Hill. Right? I feel like that's a weapon that they're just kind of wasting. Drew Brees knew how to get him the ball on checkdowns, on screens. He's not a inside runner per se, but I think that with Taysom Hill, it takes away from this really dynamic back in Alvin Kamara kind of in limbo few weeks with Taysom Hill in there. So I don't know about this game. I wouldn't bet it because I don't know when people are going to figure him out. And he's got to have a bad game. He's right on the edge
Yeah.
of making some interceptions, some turnovers. I don't know. I won't bet Philly, but I have a hard time betting New Orleans still.
Falcons Chargers. Atlanta slight favorite in this one too, at 2.5, 2 points, depending on which book you're looking at right now. But I like the way Atlanta's playing right now. I think their defense is much improved than they were in the first half of the season. The Chargers, I know we continue to say, man, they're so close this week and that week, and boy, they just can't get over the hump. Now I think you've seen the results that have not gone their way start to kind of weigh down on them a little bit. Yesterday was a complete disaster from everything that they tried to execute, and maybe a lot of that had to do with Bill Belichick and the Patriots' special teams and defense. But I'm kind of off that whole Chargers. Hey, the Chargers are going to keep this thing close, but it's still the Falcons. That's not a great team. They're still a team with flaws. This game really does nothing for me. I think the Falcons win this one, but I'm not willing to put money on it.
Me neither. Interestingly, though, this line has moved 3.5 points, mostly because of how the Chargers got blown out last week. So you either believe that the Chargers won't get blown out again, or you believe that they're just kind of calling it in for the year
Yeah.
and wait for Anthony Lynn to get fired. The wild card here is Justin Herbert, right? He can do some things. So let's
Yep.
see how. I think it's more indicative on how he responds than necessarily how the whole team responds.
Yeah.
As to what's coming up next for them.
The WFT taking on the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, the game will be in Arizona, even though it's a home game for the Niners. San Francisco is a 3-point favorite in what I'm looking at right now. This one is tempting, I think, for a lot of people because of what Washington just did against Pittsburgh. But this is that classic, in my opinion, and I might be totally wrong, that classic knee-jerk reaction of, well, if they can beat the Steelers, they can definitely beat the 49ers, right? I'm not going to go that far. In fact, I actually think the Niners win this game.
I do too. I think 3 is a good number for them. I'm a little stung because they let me down last week. But San Francisco, they are technically on the road, but they're still down there. They didn't leave. They're staying there. They're familiar with what they're doing right now. And I think Washington does have a letdown. I think they beat the Steelers because the Steelers are not in a good place right now. And they're not, they think they're at that level. They're not. I think the Niners handle them pretty good here. A good bounce back for them, for the Niners to build off of. I'm not gonna say it's my best bet, but I like the Niners at 3. I think that's a good number.
Sunday night game. Now, I'm curious, what are you seeing this line at the Bills and the Steelers? I'm seeing it at the Bills laying 2.5, but I
Yeah.
know that one is moved by a point here and there.
Well,
You
it's
still
kind of funny. That's moved 5 points. Think about this. It was opened up at Buffalo plus 2.5. Now it's at Buffalo minus 2.5.
okay?
And they beat both these teams. Obviously, Buffalo went out there and had a great game on the West Coast, and Pittsburgh laid an egg.
Hmm.
So they have Buffalo favored 2.5. This is you think of a team that was undefeated last week, all of a sudden they're an underdog the
Yeah.
next week. Um, wow, this
And
is
and
I
I
just have
ask you what you're seeing because I'm seeing 2.5 as well because this is my underdog. I think the Steelers bounce back. I think I hate saying that, oh, a team needs to lose in order for them to refocus because I still think you could play crappy football, somehow win a game and learn just as much. But if you're under that belief that, hey, a team needs to lose to sort of, reset everything and refocus, okay, here you go. They lost to a bad Washington football team, a team that's playing hard, but they still lost to a team that is beneath them. If that doesn't rattle some cages there, and I think Buffalo, you know me, I've taken Buffalo a lot this year. I love Buffalo. I think it's a great team, but I also think Pittsburgh has shown a lot. I'm going to take Pittsburgh as an underdog in this one.
Well, I mean, my initial thoughts would be if I were to try to go, I would like Buffalo in this spot. Um, the thing that gets me is I want to see whether or not Pittsburgh does bounce back, right? I think they're going to get Connor back this week, which will
Hmm.
be huge, right? Roethlisberger's just not in the place where you can throw every game at him and make him win the game.
Yeah,
If they have a rush game, they're a very tough offense, tough team all around. But if they don't run the ball and become one dimensional,
right.
that's harder. Looking at Pittsburgh, they got Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Cleveland coming up. So they got some tough games. I mean, not Cincinnati, but and then Buffalo's got Denver, they got Miami and they got the Patriots. So I think that Pittsburgh is in a position where if they want to keep that number one seed and get a bye week, which they do
Yep.
not have one this year,
Hmm.
they need to win. They need to win this game. They absolutely
Yep.
need to. So I think this is a pivotal game for me for Pittsburgh. I think if they win this game, Cincinnati's an easier one, and they can know that they can probably get that bye. But if they lose this game, they're in bad shape. I think that all this momentum they build up kind of goes backwards if they lose this game. So they have
Yeah,
to.
I mean, this is a playoff type game. I mean, this is going to test their playoff mettle for the Steelers. We know they're a playoff team, but are we to? I think the conversation we have about the Steelers right now, and maybe to some degree about the Bills, are they good enough to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs if those paths cross? And this is an opportunity for both of those teams, but I think especially the Steelers now coming off of their first loss to sort of get that narrative back about this team being a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. They win this game, I think they're right back there. But if they lose to a good Bills team, mind you, I'm with you. I think people start to kind of wonder, all right, is this a team that it's kind of finally getting, things are kind of catching up to them now. So I think it's a great opportunity, though, for the Steelers. So that's why I'm going to take them in this one as my best bet as an underdog.
Yeah, and I think Steelers might coax your boy Josh Allen into a couple turnovers.
Yeah.
If he does that, that's how they lose this game, is turnovers.
Monday night, Browns, Ravens. Man, the Ravens are a weird team to watch anymore. I mean, it's just I didn't think they would be as good as they were a year ago going into this season,
Mm,
but I also thought they'd be a lot better than what they showed. Now, hey, good job. You beat up on the Cowboys this week. That's awesome. Pat
mm.
yourself on the back. But as far as beating teams that matter, postseason teams like the Cleveland Browns, I like Cleveland in this game because they are running the football. They've got the two-headed monster, and defensively, they're healthy. Myles Garrett back. You mentioned Stefanski as rookie coach of the year. I would agree because I think, and if I'm a Browns fan, I'm even more frustrated with Freddie Kitchens because of how much pressure that they put on Baker Mayfield. The thing I love about Stefanski is he's saying, Baker, you don't need to win us games. We've got a good offensive line. We've got a good rushing attack. You just do the things that we need you to do when we need you to do that. Be unpredictable. As you pointed out, throwing on first down every now and then, but also leaning on the ground attack. I just feel like they've put Baker in such a better position this year. And folks, they're doing this without Odell Beckham Jr. as well. So I just like where the Browns are, and I think there's an identity crisis with the Baltimore Ravens right now. So I cannot see I can't see the Ravens winning this game. I really can't.
So this is like a pivotal moment, I think, for Cleveland, and I don't know which way it goes. Right? I mean, let's never forget they lost 38-6 to the Ravens to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cleveland, they beat the Colts and they beat the Titans. They beat two teams with winning records, and they both got them on matchup on spots. Right? Um, they lost to the Ravens and Steelers big, each of them, and
Yep.
they lost to the Raiders at home in the weather. So this will be in my mind, this is the game that either Cleveland is for real there or they
It's a
aren't.
validation game. Yep.
It really is, and I think it's gonna be an awesome game. These are very similar teams. Um, the difference in this game, to my mind, is going to be whether or not Baltimore can finally get some pass rush. Right? They really have not been able to rush the passer. They do some exotic type blitzes, which I think you might see because Mayfield's not a guy who deals with that well.
Yeah.
Low scoring game. I would bet the under on this. It's 46.5 now. I would totally bet the under because Baltimore, all they're going to do is run the ball. It's all they can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this game will go fast, right? Both these teams run the ball, and the clock will just keep ticking with that with very little time to score points. I don't have a inkling either way. I mean, it's going to be a really good game. I mean, this is going to be a great Monday Night Football game, I think. And Cleveland, let's see if whether or not they can win an important game. If they don't, then write them off because then they're not there.
Yeah.
All year long, we're talking about how good Cleveland can be, but they've already got killed by the Ravens and Steelers earlier this year.
Yeah.
So this is the game for them to either step up or not. It's just time.
As of now, no Tuesday night game. Again, the news today is the Chicago Bears have closed their facility with a fourth positive test. They're scheduled to play the Texans, so we'll see what that leads to, if that would lead to possibly delaying that game to maybe a second Monday night game or a Tuesday game. We'll find out. So I feel like every time we see one of these tests, come back, or one of these teams have, just a couple. And with the Bears, it sounded like three of practice squad players had tested positive. So not sure if it's a fourth practice squad or what. Keep an eye on that one. But as of now, the schedule is normal. We got football tonight. We've got a full slate of games on Sunday to Sunday night, and then one game on Monday. But that could change here in COVID, as we know.
Yeah, we're getting a little spoiled with football almost every night of the
I
week.
know.
I don't know if I like it or not. I just find myself watching more football. If it's a good game, I mean, throwing the Bears on Tuesday night, it's like
I
it's
don't.
gonna, it's gonna,
I don't want no more. If they do it during the day. Give them the
yeah,
Steelers treatment where they have matinee football, so everybody's working and cannot see the embarrassment that Deshaun Watson will just run all over the Chicago Bears.
yeah,
Because
give us a
although
good.
actually no, I take that back. Put them on prime time, because if they're going to get embarrassed again, I need these things to happen. So ownership has to make drastic changes.
Well, it's you know what, the Chiefs were like that for a long time too, right? They couldn't get a quarterback, they couldn't draft a quarterback, and now look at them.
Yeah.
So maybe they're the next version of the Chiefs. You never know.
Oh gosh, you're too
That'd be
kind.
nice, right?
Yeah. Well, enjoy the football tonight. Enjoy Week 14, and we will see where it takes us next week as we get even closer to the final stretch of this regular season. It's been crazy. We're getting there. That's the most important thing right now, Chris, is we're actually getting there. We can see the finish line. It's been a struggle at times, but they're powering through it, and that's all we can hope for.
The NFL will finish this thing out. I promise you.
I agree. Have
All
a
right,
good
man.
one, man.
We'll see you next time. Good luck
It's
this
not a
weekend.
game,
All right,
it's
you too.
a rich thing.